Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The death and loss of a child is frequently called the ultimate tragedy. It is often said that nothing can be more devastating. Along with the usual symptoms and stages of grief, there are many issues that make parental bereavement particularly difficult to resolve. Joining us today to tell us how she came out of her grief and why she's helping other families to do so is Tito Idakula. Tito, thank you and welcome to the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So part of how you found this work and what led you here was from a very personal story, a very personal loss. For people that don't know you and your story, can you just tell us a little bit about what happened to you and how this work chose you?
Okay, so 4 years ago I got married and got pregnant pretty early. And I carried her for 9 months, 42 weeks. I went to America to have the baby. I was doing my checks and everything was fine. I felt like there was a problem with the growth rate. Every time I went to get a scan done, it felt like she wasn't developing as much. And I was saying to my doctor, but they were like, oh no, it's not a problem. So I got to America and my first scan with my doctor is like, something is wrong. If you say that this was when you got pregnant and this was your last period date, then it's not adding up, so let's do a scan. He did the scan and said something's definitely wrong. Took me to another doctor the same day for another scan. Oh yes, something is wrong. There's a problem with the lungs and the diaphragm. We can see it, but we can't see it properly. You need even more attention. So took me to the next hospital for yet another scan, and then it was at that point they found out the baby had a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. The diaphragm is what divides our abdomen from our chest, and hers had not developed properly. So what happened was that her organs from her stomach were going up to her chest. So her lungs couldn't grow properly, her heart couldn't grow properly, and this was like pretty late in the pregnancy. So they're like, yeah, she probably won't make it. If she does, it'll be like a 10% chance of survival, and they'll have to do a lot of intervention, and she probably still won't make it. So I gave birth to her, and then a day after she was born, she passed away. And yeah, so that's how we got here. I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, as you're going from room to room to room, what's happening? What's happening to you? Because this must be like the scariest moment after coming so far.
It was unbelievable. You know when you just don't see it coming, right? And I think that's what happens with a lot of people that lose children or babies. You don't see it coming. I didn't expect to see anything. It was just a regular, I'm going to get my scan done to see when my baby is coming. And then the first time something is wrong, I'm thinking, maybe it's just, and I have a deep faith as well. So I'm thinking, no, God, nothing can be wrong. Let's see the next one. And so the whole time I'm just praying and thinking, maybe it's all just a mistake. Maybe they're not saying it properly. But by the time the third doctor came to me and said this, I remember I think I was in a bit of a denial. I was still thinking, no, I'm expecting a miracle. No, it's not going to happen. And so between that time and when she was born, which was like a few weeks later, it was every day hoping that something would change, because she was also really small. So just every day hoping that, and I think up until when she passed away, I probably didn't believe it was going to happen. So it took me a while to even be like, this really happened to me, because you don't see it coming. You don't see it coming, and it was just a blur the whole time until I think it took me a while to even accept that it really happened to me. Yeah.
So before we get deeper into that, I want to say a miracle did happen for you because you had your rainbow baby and then another one after.
Yes.
So that's your beauty for ashes right there. So
that's definitely it.
I'd like to say that, and we thank God for that.
Yeah.
But while you were going through your grief, how did you decide to now reach out to other people? Because grief is generally such an isolating experience. What inspired you to reach out and turn outwards rather than inwards?
I think for me, that was probably part of my coping mechanism, right? I'm a talker, and I'd grown up in a bit. I had my own different issues, and when that happened, I had to start dealing with the things that really bothered me about the loss. Because one of the emotions I felt was shame. And I started thinking, why am I feeling shame? Why am I so ashamed of myself? What did I do wrong? And when I went back to it, I realized that there were other issues I had also been dealing with. And so the shame was not even just about feeling like I lost a child. It was also about the people that I thought would be looking at me and laughing at me because I thought I was going to have the perfect life. So in dealing with that, I started talking to people, and it just came to me, and I got really deep into my faith, into God, you know, praying a lot. And I just knew that God wanted me to share my story. He wanted me to show that even in the midst of that pain, I could still trust God and have faith and not lose my faith. And so it was just a strong urge, share your story, share your story, share your story. And I was like, why would I share it? I was so scared because I'd never seen anybody talk about this thing before. I didn't even know that it was such a big deal. But I just pushed through. I had a coach then, Coach Lily, and she encouraged me to share my story. So I did. And then the response was just overwhelming. And even when I was sharing my story, I wasn't thinking about helping anybody else. I was just going to release myself from this thing, right? Like I just needed the freedom. And then from that, it just became a whole new thing. And I think even when you talk about miracles and beautiful ashes, I saw how God used comforting me to comfort others. I would never have thought that this tragedy would be what had led me into a whole new path in my life. And
That's
so
amazing.
It was just a blessing, and I'm so grateful that I can do that for other people as well.
So that's how Healing Cradle was born. So tell us about your event that you had yesterday to commemorate Baby Loss Awareness Week, which is a part of Baby Loss Awareness Month.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so we, globally, there's the Healing Cradle, Baby Loss Awareness Week is from the 9th to the 15th of October, globally. On the 15th of October is the last day of it, right? So what they do globally is the Wave of Light event. And this is where all around the world you light candles from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. in remembrance of your baby. And if you're in Nigeria, you light your candle, you turn it off at 8 o'clock, and then the next time zone turns on their own at 7. So it's like a wave of light. Yes. So we decided to do something like that just to be part of the global community. And we didn't want it to be morbid and just light candles. So we thought, let's release lanterns and, you know, release the pain. And that's kind of what we did. And it was so beautiful.
I think we have something to show people about that.
It was so beautiful. It really was.
This is the very first Wave of Light event we're organizing in Nigeria, and the whole point is to make sure that people that have been grieving the loss of their babies or their children, or even had miscarriages or pregnancy loss, know that they're not alone. You've been on lockdown, but I hold the... We want to bring everybody together, family and friends, and also bereaved families who have carried this burden alone for a long time. And I saw it all, still I chose the cross, and you were the one that I was thinking of when I rose from the grave. Now read out the shackles, my victory is yours. I tore the veil for you to come close. There's no reason to stand at a distance anymore. You're not far from home. I'll be your lighthouse when you're lost at sea, and I will illuminate everything. No need to be frightened by intimacy.
Wow, that is so powerful.
It actually always makes me tear.
Yeah, it did. Actually, I can feel it. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things about what you're doing is really giving people a voice, because this happens more times than we think. I mean, 1 out of 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, and sometimes people don't even know they're having a miscarriage. Sometimes it happens very quickly. You go from one scan to the next, and I mean, sometimes it happens within 6 to 8 weeks, where there's a heartbeat one day, there's not a heartbeat. They say come back in 5 days, and it's a very traumatic time because the doctors are trying to make sure they're making the right decision. So science is not exact all the time, so they tell you to come back. What did you find was one of the best ways that people felt comfortable talking about this, especially with so many different platforms now? Where have people been going to actually share their story the most?
I mean, I think there are other organizations, and, you know, a friend of mine does this thing, Tade, she does Baby Haven as well, and she also helps with people that are dealing with infertility and stuff. So I noticed that, especially in Nigeria, there are small pockets of groups that are meeting to talk. So for us, Healing Cradle, we do this was more of a public event, but normally we do really private gatherings where it's just people that have experienced this and they want to say all the things on their hearts that they've not been able to say.
So like a sit-down support
group. Yeah, so like a sit-down, a support group. It's group therapy, so it's support groups. We do that, and, you know, we can start from morning all the way to night, like just everybody sharing their own stories. And every time we do it, people leave there just feeling free, because some of the issues that come up with people are their families, the way their families dealt with the situation. So some of the women are angry with their husbands and their mothers and their fathers because they buried their child without letting them see the child first, without giving them that choice, or they cleared up the baby's room without even letting them know what was going to happen, or they just don't want to talk about it. You know, Nigerians, another one will come, don't talk about it. So in creating safe places like that, they can talk and say all those things they've been bottling up for some of them for years, and the freedom they receive from that. So I know that, you know, having those gatherings are one of the most effective ways. Counseling as well. I got to speak to a life coach when I was going through mine, and she really helped me. So I'm a big fan of get counseling, get therapy, talk to someone, talk. And don't die in silence.
So I wanted to ask you, because you've just mentioned a little bit, what are the things that people ought to do to support people around them who are going through this kind of bereavement? And let's not forget fathers as well. Many of them don't actually have the tools to support their wives and to actually process their own grief.
Yes. I think so, as you said, what are the things people can do? I think it's being present more than anything. Sometimes in our desperation to help somebody, we end up saying the wrong things or doing the wrong things. And it's like, no, how about you talk to me and find out what I want? So being present. Or sometimes it's, oh, let's talk about it. So people will call you and try to hide from the issue. But what I really want is to talk about it, right? And then for fathers, it's really awkward for them because they didn't carry the child. So you're thinking, oh, everybody focuses on the woman. Nobody ever looks at the man to say, how are you? Yes. How did you deal with it? And then you now find that there's a divide between couples because the guy is thinking, I have to be strong. I can't show my emotions. The woman is thinking, why isn't he more hurt? Why is he not more broken? Why is he acting like everything is fine? And so for me, I always tell couples, you guys should talk to each other. Be honest with each other about how you feel. It's amazing how maybe 70% of what I focus on is talking. It's amazing what that does for people. And when you're dying in silence, there's no healing. Nobody can help you. So if you're trying to help somebody, encourage them to talk about it. You can just be present. If they don't want to talk, just be present. Don't say the wrong things. Don't say another one would come. Yeah. Don't say stop crying is enough. Just if you don't know what to say, just be quiet. It's better. Also, you can do other things for them. Take them food at home, help them clean the house, you know, just little things. It doesn't have to be anything, a grand gesture. So for me, I would say just being present, and also just, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything.
Err on the side of caution.
Yes, exactly.
Another area that's very difficult, and I've been there to witness this with people, is how do you talk to children that are already expecting a sibling? Because sometimes these things happen so late in the process, and children have already picked either, you know, because children are now part of the process. They know what's happening. They know that there is a baby on the way. I find that that's also a very difficult conversation for parents to have, and sometimes parents don't want to have it. But I mean, I had someone very close to me, and I pushed them to have the conversation with their child, to say, your child also needs to be part of this conversation. How can parents have that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's you know, it's funny you say that, because a friend of mine was talking about her little nephew who thought he was an only son and he was waiting for his aunt to have a baby, and then at first he just said, oh, you know, the baby isn't coming. But what they realized was that in saying that to the boy started acting in a funny way, and they didn't realize it. So later his father was like, what's wrong? And he said, oh, I was already planning to teach him how to play football. I'm planning to take him to all the places I like, and now he's not here anymore. But they didn't realize how deeply it affected him. So they had to sit down with him to say, okay, this is it. This is what happened. Gave him the details to the extent he could understand. And then
I want us to hold that. We're going to go on a break, because I really want us to talk about how to help parents have the conversation. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the morning show. We're still talking to Tito Idakula on how to cope with the loss of a baby and how families deal with the loss of a baby. And before we went on break, we were really talking about dealing with, how do you take care of the children that are actually already here when they lose a baby, because they are part of the process in that conversation. And sometimes there is this feeling that maybe they don't know what's happening, or that almost we can sneak this by them. And I think that's adults' ignorance of like what, like children know more than we do.
Yes, definitely. And they plan for their siblings, because if you've told them there's a baby coming, then you have to tell them if the baby isn't coming anymore. It's like, even for basic things for kids, if you make them a promise, they're waiting to see that promise. And if you don't do it, they're going to hold you accountable. So if a child is meant to come and a child doesn't come, you have to sit down with that child, have a conversation. And like you were saying, do something to signify closure for the child. And sometimes if you don't even know how to do it, you can get counseling, you can get therapy. Just make sure that your child also gets the help they need while you're taking care of the father, the mother, the rest of the family. So you can't ignore the child in that matter at all. You need to get them proper help and have that proper conversation with them. And also listen to what they're thinking and let them process their own thoughts in the most childish or innocent ways they can, but don't ignore their voices. That's what
Absolutely. So apart from Healing Cradle, you also have My Lighthouse. Can you tell us about that?
So My Lighthouse actually is the umbrella. So My Lighthouse actually started before the Healing Cradle. And it was through My Lighthouse that I shared my story. And My Lighthouse, what we do is we just share inspiring stories, inspiring content, people that have been through difficult times beyond even baby loss that want to talk about their story. So recently we started a talk show called My Jesus Experience. And in that we talk to people that have been through really difficult times. So I talked to a friend of mine who got married and his wife died within 6 months of being married and she was pregnant. And then recently I talked to Kobam's Asoko's wife, Jola, and we talked about their son being born blind and how they've had to deal with that. And the whole point is to encourage others to know that, difficult times come for everyone, but how do you push past that? And, our faith and growing in God and just trusting God. So that's something we also do on My Lighthouse. And then people just share their own testimonies and we share testimonies as well. So that's basically, the idea is just light in the darkness of the world. It's just a physical, the way when you're on the ocean and there's storms, you're looking for that lighthouse. So that's
secrecy causes shame, and that all needs darkness.
Yes.
Secrecy only grows in darkness, and that's the thing about shame. Once light comes in, it just
it dissolves. And I think it's funny because in Lighthouse, that's what we talk about: speak, share, heal. Because it's all about so many people are living with broken hearts in different ways, and they don't even know. And just by talking about it, that wasn't too bad. I actually feel better. And so I just give people the opportunity to speak as well.
So how do you break the cultural barrier of silence? Because there's sayings in our language, which is that you don't put all your business out there, you don't do this. And it is cultural, our cultural instinct is to shut down.
Yes.
So how are you finding that I find that there's a new generation of women and people just talking, which is great. But how do you get, because you also, as part of healing, there has to also be, we have to bring the past in, and that past also has to talk, because sometimes the key to people healing is in those people's hands.
Exactly.
So
you just said it all. For me, it's a consistency thing, right? So, for example, we did this first event. I have to do it again next year, because I have to keep until people are like, okay, you know what? Let's accept this a bit more. And then, speaking of dealing with the past, I actually wrote a book called Royalty. And it was about my story growing up and the difficulties I encountered and how it shaped me, and not necessarily positively. But in writing that book and addressing some of the things that I had not spoken about for years, I see myself able to thrive more. I'm able to do all the things that God has called me to do. And so if you're not talking about your past, God said to me, hurt young girls don't have to be broken women. And so I focus a lot more on women, but I realize that we try to carry all our hurts into maybe marriage or work or, relationships. And then the pain is manifesting in different ways. Maybe we are more angry than we ought to be, or, we are more nervous about things because we're not dealing with it. So it's important that we give everybody an avenue to speak. I'm also a fan of counseling, so my goal for the Healing Cradle is that in 5 years, we're going to have everybody can get counseling for free if this happens to them. That's one of the visions we're trying to achieve, because when you also go through grief, a lot of things from the past come, and then everything adds together and is a big mess. And so you need to go back to your past. So for me, breaking the culture is just consistency, doing it over and over and over until they realize that you're not going to stop, and then they either get on board or
they're like, well, let me join this conversation.
Exactly. My mom is always livid with me because, why are you still talking about these things? We've moved on. I'm like, Mommy, please, people are dying in silence. Yeah.
Put it out. I wanted to talk to you about your book, Royalty, which talks about the effects of childhood trauma and how it impacts your life. Not most people haven't read Freud's theories or what have you, but we all do understand that link, that relationship, but we don't explore it. It's a really courageous thing to do. To even sit and look within, that introspectiveness in itself is courageous. A lot of people cannot face themselves. And then you went and put pen to paper and put it out there. So that's like different levels of valor. So tell us about the process of writing your book, and did it give you closure as you got understanding?
Yes, I think it gave me closure in many ways because I think God is faithful. I don't try to preach too much, but my life is really a testimony because I never would have thought that this one trauma, once again, the loss of my daughter, is also part of what led to the book being written, because I had to really address myself. Why would you feel ashamed? Why would you feel guilty? What do you think could have caused it? And I had to start addressing some of those things. Shame because I grew up with different people that weren't exactly the most encouraging, and a big part of my life was to prove to them that I would be a success. And before my daughter passed, I just left my job in a bank. So I didn't have a job, but I thought at least I'll have a daughter. And then I didn't have anything. And I'm thinking, oh, so the people that were expecting me to fail, they've won. I failed. So I had to start thinking, what kind of thinking is that?
Sure. That is the thinking you would have in that environment. They put that in your mind.
Yeah, exactly. So you're trying to prove. So I'm like, there's something wrong with this thinking. I need to reassess it. And then when I did, I realized that, no, I can't live my life like this. And then also I had, as a younger lady, I'd had 2 abortions. So I thought, oh, maybe God is punishing me for this. And I had to understand that it doesn't do that. It has, no. So those were all the different things that I had to, reconcile. But the reason why I feel like God uses this in my life is so that others can know it as well and think, no, you guys, we're living life wrong. We're seeing life from a warped perspective. We need to fix that. And that's my whole goal in life. So the book wasn't really, it was for me because I had to express myself, but it was also for others. Like, okay, I'm sure we all have stories, but some of us just have to use our stories for others, and some of us just get to keep our stories private. So
among those others, were the people in your childhood who introduced that dysfunction, what was their response to the book? Everybody
always asks that. We not a lot of conversation. My siblings are amazing, so they just support everything I do. Luckily, my dad, I know, read it, but we never had a conversation about it. My stepmother's read it. I think my mom said something, but even that wasn't much of a conversation. But now that's fine for me, because before I used to need validation. I used to need them to say, oh, we're sorry, oh, this. But I realized that it's not about anybody else but me. And so in writing the book, I had to also forgive a lot of people, a lot of things that were said to me, a lot of things that were done to me. And that was for me. So I don't need them to say anything anymore. They know what happened. And even before I released the book, I made sure I had a conversation with my father to say, this is how I felt growing up. I didn't think you were this, you were that. And he didn't necessarily apologize, but he heard me. And that's all I needed. I didn't really need him to say, I'm sorry, because it's not about that. Everybody, and I went to a church yesterday and I spoke about forgiveness. And one woman said, but you forgive somebody and you see them, they're still doing the wrong things. I said, yeah, but it's not about them. It's about you. You deserve to be free. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have joy. So when we're talking about releasing yourself, we're not talking about releasing yourself as a condition to others accepting your truth. It's yours. It's for your own benefit. And if they do apologize or they come to you, that's great, but you look forward. So nobody really said anything to me, and I'm just focused on everything.
And using your life to be really your true instrument of change.
Like you were saying about how we don't have a culture of speaking out. We also don't have a culture that older people apologize to younger people. So that's one of the things books like Royalty hopefully will start to do as well, because now we have more young people speaking out. We will have eventually older people actually taking account for what they did,
done,
and ownership of what they've done, and apologizing for it. That's the next frontier.
Yeah, and I think also it helps me because as a mother now, and I have 2 babies, I have to parent differently, right? So I'm quicker to apologize to my son, even though it really experiments so I have to do that, and
you're building that muscle now, so that as you get older, it doesn't feel awkward. Because I think that's the thing. We have to start to build this muscle of having different types of conversation, and I mean, I remember having a conversation with my mom once, and I said, if you really want your relationship with another one of my siblings to improve, you have to apologize. Yes. And I think that she realized how important it was for her, this relationship. And so she started that process. But it was very difficult because she had never been armed with that type of information.
Exactly.
So I think you're building the right muscles, the right skills. I mean, in 20 years, at least you'll have a conversation where you can say, you know what, I'm sorry if I did this.
Exactly.
And it's such a simple, and I think what people don't understand is such a simple thing that can just create so much freedom for the person when you say
simple
it.
And powerful.
Yes, it is. It really is. And so for me, I go back to my daughter that passed away, and in as much as that was the most devastating experience, it's probably the most impactful experience of my life, and it's led me to everything else. So I didn't lose at the end of the day,
It sounds like you gained so much more. And I mean, so this month, are there any other activities people can do? Are there places that people can go? Where can people go to have this type of support groups? How can they find support groups?
I mean, right now, a key part of what we do is all social media. So on Instagram at the Healing Cradle. There's also Baby Haven by Tade. There's quite a few, but those are the 2 major ones I know right now in terms of dealing specifically with infertility, baby loss, miscarriages. So Instagram at the Healing Cradle. You can also follow me, Tito Idakula, and you probably see everything else. But we're going to be having more regular support groups so that there's always conversation. And then the goal is there's a lot we're trying to achieve, but the goal is to have, support groups in different local government areas so that you can always have somewhere to go, and, online as well.
That'd be amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.